Good evening, excuse me. Good evening and welcome to the October 10th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. Before we get into the agenda, I'd like to ask everyone to please silence your devices that you have with you. And let's see. We don't have any RDAs tonight, so I don't have to explain that. All right, so the first item on the agenda is to vote the minutes of October 3rd.
Madam Chair, I read them. I don't have any issues with them. I'll move to accept as written.
Second.
All right, I have two very small corrections. They're just little word things. So, all those in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, so moved. All right. Requests for hearings under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. Can you hear me, ma'am? I'm not sure what I can do about that.
We don't have microphones.
These are really for the TV audience, so. But I will try to speak up and have other people do as well. All right, so our NOI tonight is Town of Falmouth, care of James McLaughlin, T-Ticket Path between Route 28 and 56 T-Ticket Path, East Falmouth, Massachusetts, for permission to reconstruct the beginning section of T-Ticket Path roadway surface, including mill and overlay, roadway profile changes, and stormwater management.
Madam Chairman, I have to recuse myself.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Jim.
Good evening. Let me just sign in here. Try it again. Thank you, Madam Chair. James McLaughlin, representing the Town of Falmouth Public Works Department, and middle of a notice of intent for T-Ticket Path. Let's see if I can. I loaded this presentation on earlier today, so. There we go. Got it. Thank you. I apologize, it's tough to see this screen with the glare of the lights. But in any event, T-Ticket Path is located off of T-Ticket Highway, Route 28, and it runs down.
Yeah, I'd say this one here. Jim, is it glaring in there, Jim?
Yeah, I think it's probably one of these. Possible to. There we go. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Hanging light above podium. Pretty clearly marked. I should have got that.
So the project location is T-Ticket Path, this area right here, which is off of, as I said, T-Ticket Highway. T-Ticket Path runs down to a low point here at Perch Pond, then wraps up and around upon itself. So the project area is about 1,100 feet from the highway here down to Perch Pond, and then up to a high point here where then the road ends up heading back down gradient this way. So the total length, like I said, is about 1,100 feet of area that we're proposing to improve. The road up at T-Ticket Highway is approximately elevation 20. When we get down to this area here, we're at elevation a little over 2. Very close to high tide, or even below high tide. And then up here, it's about elevation 16. The existing drainage in the street is a drain line that runs parallel with the traveled way down along here and discharges out in this location here. At the upper end, it's a 15-inch pipe, and then down lower, it's an 18-inch pipe. There's a drain manhole up here at the top of the road, which picks up some of the drainage on the state highway. And then there's a catch basin here that connects over into the drain line, and a second catch basin down here at Norris Path that also connects into that drain line. Then there's a cross culvert here at Perch Pond that's a 36-inch pipe, and all these pipes are reinforced concrete. The roadway itself is a 40-foot right-of-way, and the traveled way is about 20 feet. And it's pretty much located within the center of the right-of-way. The resource areas, with the exception of land subject to coastal flooding, are all located down in the low point at Perch Pond. So we've got a riverfront area, and this area here is what is called the river, the stream crossing from the unnamed upstream tributary into Perch Pond. So we've got the 100-foot on either side, and then the 200-foot buffer for the riverfront area. We've got inland bank. Again, the Zone A is in the reddish color, and the orange is the outer bank. We've got land under salt pond buffer, and that's in the blue, and the light blue is excuse me, the outer buffer zone. We've got bordering vegetated wetlands on both sides of the road here and on this side. So we've got the 50-foot buffer in the purple, or the darker purple, and the lighter purple is the 100-foot buffer. And the area that's in the blue, the outline, is the proposed limits of work, which is all located within the existing paved ways. We've also got land under water bodies buffer.
Excuse me, Jim.
Sure.
I'm very sorry to interrupt, but I think we need to ask those people to move down the hallway further. Thanks, Steve. We're not allowed to close the door because it's an open public meeting. Sorry for the interruption.
Land under water bodies buffer.
I need to wait for Steve to
Oh,
come
yeah,
back.
sure,
There's a
no
quorum
problem.
concerns.
Enforcer.
Thank you, Steve. Or,
Thank you.
go right ahead.
Again, the buffer for land under water bodies, the Zone A is the green, and then the lighter green is the Zone B. And then finally, banks of salt pond buffer. The Zone A, the darker shaded yellow, and then the lighter shade is the Zone B. And finally, we have the land subject to coastal flooding or storm flowage. This is the Fema map. This is T-ticket path in this area here. This point right here is the low point. And this is Perch Pond heading down this way. So just about the entire project area is located within the 100-year floodplain. It's elevation 10 at T-ticket path. Just immediately downstream, it jumps up to elevation 12. And further out into Perch Pond, it gets up to elevation 14, and further out, elevation 15. In terms of the work that we're proposing, is really three elements to it. One is paving. Second is drainage improvements, and a third is some modifications to the profile and the grading of the road. As far as paving goes, what we're proposing to do is mill and overlay this section from the state highway here down to about here. That's about 600 feet. So that's just milling it and then putting in a new 3 inches of pavement. This area here, from about here to this section here, which is about 400 feet, we're proposing to regrade the road and also repave it. And then the last 100 feet from here up to this this high point would be similar to the first section, mill and overlay. In terms of the profile modifications, we've got this 400-foot section, which is about station 600 here to 1,000 here. We're proposing the darker upper line is the proposed profile. And that basically what we're looking to do is add about a foot in this area here to create a high point, which is in this location here, so that drainage running down the road will get redirected towards this sediment basin here. And then similarly, we've got another low point down here. So the water, this is the high point here, the water flows down to the low point. And in this area here would be directed into a trench drain. So the proposed drainage improvements are, there's a few up at the upper end. We're looking to add leaching basins up right at the top of the road. We've got a proposed manhole here onto the over the existing drain line, and the detail for that is down in this section of the plan. And basically, what we would do is build a new manhole here over the existing drain line and install a weir inside the manhole so that the water that's coming down this 15-inch pipe would be redirected into this bypass and into these 4 chambers here. And that would recharge the stormwater before it moves down the drain line. And that is, this weir is set basically at 12 inches. So that, and this is a 15-inch pipe, so most of the water will be directed into that recharge basins. And then once those are full, we bypass and continue on down into the, further down the drain line. Similarly, the existing catch basin here connects over to an existing drain manhole in this location, and the detail for that is up in this area. And basically what we're proposing to do here is keep that catch basin, bring it over, and where it currently goes over to this drain manhole, intercept it with additional recharge basins in this area here. And similar to the first section, once that's full, the remaining drainage would continue on into the existing drain line. As we move further down the road, in this area here, we've got a small sediment basin that we're proposing. Is an existing catch basin here that runs into a drain manhole on the other side of the road. And the detail for that is up in this section of the plan. What we're proposing is it's a less than a foot deep sediment basin that will pick up drainage from both legs of Norris Path. We'll install a new catch basin on this portion of the approach on Norris Path, and then a double catch basin on the other. Both of those will discharge into this sediment basin. Then there'll be a beehive catch basin at the low point of the basin, and then that will connect into what was the catch basin there. We'll convert that to a drain manhole, and then that will continue over to the existing drain line. Further down, when we get to the low point in this section here, we're proposing a trench drain And that's shown a little bit better here. This is a 36 by 4 foot gravel trench, 3/4 inch stone. That'll take the overland flow from the road and intercept it before it gets discharged to the wetlands. So when we regrade the road here, what we're doing is starting here, going to a low point here, and you can see this proposed contour here, this sort of a V shape. That's directing all of the overland flow into that basin. And we have a similar situation. So then we have a high point, and then a similar situation with the low point here. And this proposed contour line here, this V shape again, is directing all of the stormwater on the road towards that trench drain. And then lastly, as we move up the hill into the high point again, we're proposing to install additional catch basins with leaching basins for that area up there as the water's traveling down towards that low point to intercept that. And in terms of the erosion and sediment control, what we're proposing is silt sacks in each of the two basins that currently exist, and then silt fence and wattles along this section of the resource areas on this southern side of the roadway. Similarly, silt fence and wattles along this section here. We also are proposing some hay bales in this area here, which is where the trench drain is, and also hay bales in this area here of the sediment basin until this is vegetated and we're able to remove the silt sack as well as the hay bales. This portion of Norris Path is currently it's paved but really broken up, so we'll be repaving that section, and then when we get up to here, it'll be returned back to dense grade material, which is what the remainder of the road is. And I think that pretty much covers everything. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jim. Mark, you want to kick this off? Oh, I'm sorry, Jen.
No, we don't have any questions at this time.
Is your stormwater plan designed to prevent any water from flushing into Perch Pond?
To the maximum extent practicable. So, there's going to be times when the, which really happens on any street where you have anything beyond 20 or 25-year storm event. The street drainage is really sized for that, and that's not just in Falmouth. That's, most communities. They all have varying storm events, but usually it's between 15 and 25 year. After that, any storm event greater than that, what'll end up happening is the water's going to run right down the pavement and into the low point here. Of course, in the 100-year flood, the whole road will be underwater. So, the drainage system in the roadway, not only will it be surcharged if we don't bolt down the manhole covers, they'll be literally lifting off the frames. They'll be under, some of them, like this one in here will be under 5 or 6 feet ahead, and it will just float right up.
So let me see if I can understand. You're saying it's essentially designed for a 15-year storm before it starts to, if you will, overflow.
Yeah, in Falmouth, it's 25, but
25.
I was using it as just in Massachusetts in general, 15 to 25 is kind of the range of what typically a town storm drainage system will handle.
And who does the stormwater analysis for the town? Does the town do it in-house, or do you
Yes. We just filed a notice of intent with EPA and DEP for the MS4 permitting, which is stormwater management plan for the next 10 years. So every year going forward, there are certain elements of that plan that we have to follow through on. That type of work most likely will be subbing that out to a consultant. It involves mapping all of the outfalls in the entire town, and then going back and doing water quality testing for all those outfalls and verifying what the discharges are, what the quality of the water is, and the ones that, of course, are impaired, we'll end up having to go back and come up with solutions on how to adjust that. And that's over a 10-year period. You know, there's certain milestones that we have to hit every year for the next 10 years.
Can you then, aside from repairing the broken up pavement, sort of summarize in 2 or 3 bullets, why should we do this?
Well, the big one is the pavement. There's a lot of broken up and old patch pavement there. But we are making significant improvements to the drainage. Right now, in the calculations that we've done as part of the stormwater management analysis is removing 80% of total suspended solids. Right now, there's no and literally zero control of any of the stormwater here. In fact, one of the problems that we had with multiple surveys out here was that a lot of it was completely clogged and filled with sand and dirt and non-functioning. So every time it rained, everything was going directly into Perch Pond. So we had to go back and locate these manholes, open them up, flush them out, dig them out, and now it's working, but it's still untreated. So what we're proposing to do is treat it with these basins up here at the top, as well as these here, then the sediment basin here, and the trench, and then additional leaching basins up at the other end. So all that treatment right now doesn't occur.
So you have a number of outfalls that just go right from a drain into the pond. Is that what you're saying?
Everything goes right to the pond right now, or to the...
With the upgrade of the new work, there'll be leach pits and settling basins, which hopefully will, at least for modest storms, collect the water and keep it from flushing right into the pond.
Correct.
Thank you. That's all.
Steve?
Thank you. The silt, hay bales, et cetera, are during construction period, or,
Yes.
and you're going to inspect the basins monthly. Is that the normal process for
Yeah, and
DPW?
well, we don't inspect all of our basins on a monthly basis. We have hundreds and hundreds of basins. And in fact, that's another aspect of the notice of intent that we filed with, EPA and DEP, is putting together a inspection plan for all of our basins and a cleaning plan for that. So that's but that's separate from the construction aspect here. When we're during a construction period, we'll be inspecting the basins. And what happens a lot of times with these silt sacks is they fill right up, and if you don't clean them, basically they're not effective. So that's why it's important that we stay on top of that during construction. One thing I forgot to mention, speaking of sediment control, is we also are proposing a turbidity boom out around the cross culvert here as an added protective measure.
Great, thanks. Seems like a great improvement. Considering our recent meeting and discussion of this area, I assume this, as you said at the meeting, this plan was in progress at that time.
Yes, yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Jamie?
Is there any means to filter whatever overflow there is that would go directly in the Perch Pond?
I think It would involve, doing something at the outfall, and within the resource areas there. Because right now, the existing drain line runs, down into, a fair amount into the bordering vegetated wetlands.
When are you looking to start?
As soon as we, get a permit. We'd like to do, at a minimum, I would like to do the whole thing this fall, but at a minimum, this lower section here with the regrading and repaving of this 600-foot section first, and then continue up and work on the leaching basins on, at the upper end, here, and then on the other side.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Betsy?
Hi, Jim, that was a nice presentation.
Oh,
And
thank you.
actually, Mark's questions were good, because it
Right.
gave kind of a summary of why we're doing this. Am I correct or incorrect? Do we use straw bales, not hay bales? Yeah.
I'll work with DPW to get the right material.
Okay.
That's fine.
And the other question I had, was, in the seating notes, where was it? Fertilizer for the establishment of temporary and permanent vegetative cover shall be 10-10-10, applied at a rate of 15 pounds per 1,000 square feet. We allow fertilizer right next to the,
That's fine.
It's probably
We can-
just a miss.
That's kind of a cut and paste type thing. My experience with these is you don't really have to do anything to get the vegetation to come back.
well, especially in these wetland areas,
Very, very
they'll
quickly.
love it.
Yep.
We know about that. So I just have fill calcs. So what I'm envisioning is where there's a low point, you're gonna make a little hill to divert it to the two areas that are gonna treat it.
Right.
And so the road itself is just gonna be a little hill, and then it's gonna,
Right, so we're going to create a little high point right in this area here, which is in this section here of the road between Norris and Seabrook. Well, really between Norris and Birch Pond. A high point in this area here, which is shown in this profile here. Right now, it runs down and continues down to the low point
right,
here.
but my question, I understand that part, a little hill. What I'm wondering is, on either side, is the road just gonna taper down? If I was walking on that road, is it gonna be like this? Or is it gonna be like that?
You mean the side slopes?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 2-to-1 side slope, but it's very, we're talking about raising the road less than a foot, so
It won't be,
it's not a significant fill off the side.
okay,
And we're also, we're also proposing to install sheet piling along
oh, that's, I noticed
either
that.
side of the cross culvert here. So that section will be,
Yeah, I
Or-
noticed that you had that. So next question I had, is there any way, so I'm sure a significant amount of the water that's going down there is coming from Route 28.
mhm.
Is there any way to work with the state to, down the way? Or you don't have to answer that question.
Well, actually, normally I would say no. Based on my past experience, they kind of have an attitude of, you take our water and like it, it's been there and that's the way it is.
Yeah. I mean, we've had that issue before with the state.
And that's not just this district, that's kind of.
Everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
But, there's also different proposals going back and forth in terms of improvements on that road. And so at that point in time, if there are any improvements there, they'll have to comply with the new stormwater guidance. So
And so that could be a draft,
that,
and
that
that could be one of the
be
elements that were
something
put in.
that's worked into that plan, or would be something that's worked into that plan.
Sure.
Would they be getting a waiver for being a redevelopment project with respect to the stormwater management requirements?
No, I don't think so. In fact, I think they have a similar requirement with EPA and DEP to go through and file a notice of intent for all of their stormwater also. So they're under a similar mandate. It's a little bit different. Ours is a small municipal designation, whereas theirs, of course, is statewide. But they're under the same requirements that we are. In fact, and you see it in a lot of state highway projects where they're, really without doing anything else, they're installing stormwater basins in these interchange areas and trying to treat some of the stormwater that normally just ran into places like the Charles River, for example.
That's fine. So sort of getting back to what Mark was getting at, can you, I mean, I realize this is a ballpark figure, but given an annual rainfall, can you guesstimate the percentage of water that will be treated before it overflows the system? I mean, obviously, that's dependent on how many big storms there are and so forth.
Yeah, well, most of our design is for a 25-year storm. So to that extent, we'll be treating the stormwater. Beyond that, as I mentioned, there really isn't much treatment for higher storm events than that.
It's just going to overwhelm the system and...
The whole street will be underwater, never mind treating it.
Well, all right.
I mean, at the low point here, right now, it's a little over elevation 2, and the 100-year storm is elevation 10. Well, it's 12 right on. The way that FEMA calculates these things is kind of not an exact science. But on the downstream side, it's elevation 12. So if you're on the downstream side, you're under 10 feet of water at the.
Well, no,
at the
I
low
wasn't
point.
thinking of a 100-year storm. I was thinking of kind of an average year. Say we get 40 inches. Of those 40 inches, is it like 10 inches come in greater than 25-year storms, or?
Oh, it's probably less than that. 25-year storm is a pretty good storm event.
Right, but we've had several lately.
And that really goes to, I think what's happening more and more, at least it seems to be more and more, is the intensity is higher than it has been in the past. So you have a very short time period with intense rainfall that ends up qualifying as, say, a 25-year storm, where if you look at the normal hydrographs that NOAA puts out, they, in most cases, they look at a 24-hour period, and it's kind of a bell curve that they do those hydrographs on. But they also have them for very short, intense periods, and those are usually 2 to 4 inches in an hour or two is a very, very intense storm that starts to get to a 25 to 50-year event.
And that would probably overwhelm the system.
Yeah, the 50-year will. 25 is right about where we'll make it.
Okay. And my other question was, you asked about construction. You'd like to start as soon as possible?
Yes.
And hopefully, I mean, if everything went well, maybe finish by Christmas?
Oh, yeah, well, normally the asphalt plants will be closing
Oh, that's right.
mid to late November, sometimes into early December. It's always weather dependent when you get to that later time in the year. So, as long as we can get mix, we keep going.
Thanks.
Thanks, Betsy. Kevin?
Isn't it true that certainly in regards to pavement runoff, that the first flush is going to contain most of the particulates?
Right, so usually what,
So that if you have these treatment places and they're functioning, that you'll get most of it
Even
in
a
any
big storm.
kind of a storm.
Yeah.
right, the first inch is typically what you try to get, and that's why when we go through the calculations for the total solid TSS removal, we've got projecting to meet that 80% goal
Okay. Okay.
with these.
But that
you know-
also requires that the town will have to maintain them.
Oh, yeah, yep, absolutely.
And then if they're right about global warming, won't matter in about 20 years anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Courtney?
Yeah, clearly this is an improvement over what is there. But, you know, what concerns me about any project like this, and it's not, as you said, it's two separate phases. You're focusing on the construction phase rather than the maintenance phase. But the maintenance phase, in my mind, is critical. I mean, in terms of the health of this area, which a lot of the folks that live around Perch Pond are very concerned about, maintaining these structures so as to minimize the impact on Perch Pond is critical. So my question is, one of them is, so what's the life expectancy of that trench drain over there?
Well,
You have you said it's 4 feet deep and what, 4 feet wide?
it's only a foot deep.
Foot deep.
It's 4 feet wide, and it has so basically it's a rectangle,
Right, with 1.5 inch stone in it, or?
yeah, 3/4 to 1.5 inches, and it's lined with a filter fabric. So that, I would say, probably has to get turned over every 5 years or so. And if there's a big storm, then naturally it could be, all silted up in a year. But generally, I would say about every 5 years.
I mean, I think that's critical. And, I mean, I know it's not part of your proposal here, but I think it's critical because otherwise it isn't gonna work. And along that line is,
It is
I'm
part
a
of the
layman
proposal.
and
It
a
is.
carpenter
It is part of
by
the
trade.
proposal.
Okay. And not necessarily a meteorologist. So can you paint a vivid picture of a 25-year storm? What does that really mean? I mean, how many people out here understand what a 25-year storm is? So, I mean, if you could tell, just so I understand.
Sure. So the way that they calculate that is based on historical rainfall data. And NOAA puts together these hydrographs, which
So
is-
how would I know I'm in a 25-year storm when it's happening? What are the rainfall amounts per hour and all of that?
Well, that's what I'm getting to. The intensity varies. So the normal storms that are typically modeled are 24-hour period. Most of the rainfall is within a 12-hour period because it's, like I said, a bell curve. And you've got that peak that's usually at around hour 12, say. And then, it tails off and also builds up. For a 100-year storm, that ranges anywhere from 10 to 12 inches. And there's different hydrographs, people are always coming up with new ones, and some are a little more intense than others, but if you have 12 inches of rain in a 24-hour period, that's about a 100-year storm. 25-year storm is probably in the 4 to 6 range.
4 to 6 inches in that.
Right, but if you have, like I said, if you have 2 inches of rain in an hour, you're getting close to a 25-year
Yeah,
storm
exactly.
too, because they have, if you look at the NOAA charts, just about everybody uses that 24-hour hydrograph. But if you look, they have them broken down right down to an hour. And for very intense rainstorms, you know, you can get a 25-year storm with a couple inches of rain in a very short period of time. But you know, the intensity is really what seems to have been, people have been experiencing more and more intense rainstorms lately, I think. In Falmouth, you know, we haven't had the storm of record is the 38 hurricane, and that's not even a 100-year storm. That was in the 70-plus range. So we really haven't had a significant type storm event that's close to 100 years here in well over 100 years.
We've had some pretty severe local storms that have dumped a couple of inches of rain in an hour, and they pretty much overwhelm these systems.
Yep.
Jim, are these standards updated, or, it seems like they're out of date, is what I'm.
The NOAA ones are probably 30, 40 years old. The most recent one that I think that came out maybe 20 years ago was Cornell came out with some new hydrographs, and everyone said, oh, you have to use those. They're not appreciably different than the NOAA ones, though. You know, and different states do that on a regular basis. They collect their own data and have and develop their own statistical hydrographs for their particular area. But generally, they're pretty close to the NOAA ones.
Who would do that in the state, MEMA, or?
I would think it'd probably be DEP, but I don't think there's anyone. More likely than not, it would end up being something that would be undertaken by you know, an academic institution like UMass. Amherst maybe might do something like that. But it just requires collecting a lot of data, which, you know, some of the gauges that are utilized, you know, have well over 100 years of history on them. Some of them. So you know, they have you really need a long track record to be able to start extrapolating some of these statistics, I think.
Yeah, it seems like this is one of the things, like everything else, that is kind of speeding up. I heard something to the effect that Houston has had, for the 200-year storm, they've had 5 of them in the past 12 years.
Yeah, well,
so you wonder how meaningful it is at a certain point.
That hurricane last year, I think, had 35, 40 inches of rain in you know, in a 2-day period, which that's, like I said, a 100-year storm normally is in that 12 inches of rain, 10 to 12 in a 24-hour period. They're literally triple that.
So, but I think it's also important for people to understand, when you're talking about a 25-year storm, it doesn't mean it's gonna happen once every 25 years.
Right, that's,
Yeah.
It'll happen, it happens
As
much
a-
more frequently.
has a 25% chance of occurring
In any given year.
Well, I'm sorry.
I mean,
right.
4%
Sorry.
in any given year.
Yes, Mark.
You've repeatedly mentioned the 25-year storm, which we may think is sort of outdated. information, but nonetheless, why would you pick a design? What is the rationale behind picking a design that matches the rainfall of a 20-year, 25-year storm? Is that a state mandate, or is that common sense, or why not go 50-year? Or does that triple the cost? What are the issues there?
Yeah, no, I think it's cost issue. These are, I don't know when Falmouth adopted its regulations, probably in the 70s. And most of the communities I've worked in, which is probably 40 or 50 different cities and towns in Massachusetts, they all have a similar interval of rainfall that they look at, and it's really economics. You can't, when you start looking at designing for a 50-year storm or a 100-year storm, the pipes are just incredibly large, and it's just not practical. So that's kind of I don't know who first came up with it. Maybe it was a professional association or something. They said this is about what we should be doing, but it seems to be pretty common practice throughout the Commonwealth.
But, so, but the point that Kevin made, that you both discussed, is very relevant, in that the water to be treated is usually the first inch, so that in any given storm, even if there is overflow, if the first inch has been treated, then it takes a lot of the material that you don't want to get into the wetlands.
Yeah, in terms of water quality, yes.
In terms of water quality. Okay. Well, I mean, water's gonna go to wetlands, right? It flows downhill.
Wetlands got there.
Yeah. We set?
I just had a couple questions. Has the town selected a contractor? I'm thinking more in terms of schedule than who it is. Just wondering if that's all lined up and ready to go, or,
Yes and no. There are basically three options that we have. One is to do the work in-house. Of course, we don't do any paving. Our paving is through the county bid, and we're, have to use Lawrence Lynch, which is fine because they're right next door, and they do good work, and they're very responsive. But in terms of the drainage, we can use Lynch. We also have a contract with Robert B. Hour to do drainage throughout the town on an as-needed basis, basically on-call type thing, where we have unit prices. Again, that was put out to bid, and they were the low bidder on that. So they're a possibility to do the drainage. Lynch is a possibility, and then we can also do that in-house ourselves. So the drainage portion of it and the grading portion of it, we can do it. Howard can do it. Lynch can do it. And then, like I said, the paving would be Lynch.
and setting aside the question of what might happen in terms of weather, what do you envision the working time, amount of time be to complete the project?
I would say, 4 to 6 weeks. But I think that's why, timing-wise, we really want to concentrate on that 400 stretch where we're talking about regrading and redirecting the water towards the low spots, and getting that done this fall.
Mm-hmm.
And then looking at doing the leaching basins further up the hill later on, or possibly in the spring, depending on weather. Ideally, we'd like to do it all this year.
Not to be too pessimistic about weather, but is there is there significant risk if the weather goes bad and you've got the project all ready for paving and you can't get any asphalt? Where are we then?
No, that would be a problem, but we wouldn't, the first 600 feet and then the last 100 feet, both of those are milling and overlay, so we wouldn't start the milling unless we had you know, had a projection going forward that, and usually it's, you need to have a 40-degree day with the temperature rising to know that you can pave. That's kind of a state standard or a construction standard that most people follow. So, and then the other thing is,
So a typical weather prediction window would be adequate for,
yeah, before, I mean, we certainly wouldn't mill it and then know that there's gonna be a freeze for the next month. So, that's one thing. Then, I guess the other aspect of it is, if it becomes an issue of just getting down the binder, most people don't like that. Personally, I would prefer that. Better off to have the entire road at binder grade through the winter. That way, if there's any settlement or anything, you can address it when you do the finish. So that's my ideal. Most people don't like that because it doesn't look good. Here, there are no real structures, at least there won't be until we put in the leaching basins, which is an issue that you have. You know, you have a raised structure above that's, you know, typically 1.5 inches above binder grade that plows hit and people hit with their tires. So that's a negative. So like I said, ideally, if we can do the low section, that 400 feet, and get that bindered, I wouldn't want to put the finish down on that until we're ready to put on the finish for the remainder.
anything else?
I'm going to make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second.
Okay, is there anything, any comments or questions from the public? Yeah, all right. One at a time, you'll need to come to the lectern, introduce, identify yourself, take it away.
Hi, my name's Paul Shardy. I actually own that house where the driveway is right there. As most of the work is happening in front of my house, I mean, a lot of the bulk work, I'm just curious because I haven't seen the plan yet. I'm actually a civil engineer, so. Is there going to be curb on the road? Is it Cape Cod berm? Is it?
You're gonna have to share the lectern.
Yeah.
No, the only place that we're talking about any curbing is just down at this area here where the trench drain is. And we're talking about installing a little bit of vertical curb, the remainder Cape Cod berm here, and similarly over here with depressed curbing here adjacent to the trench. So what'll end up happening is that this will be, the water will be directed from either side into that area where it will be a depressed curb.
So the water's going to be running down the north side, or whatever side that is, of the road? The driveway side of the road?
Yeah, so
Okay.
this V line in here, that's a proposed contour, and the way that the drainage works is the runoff runs perpendicular to the contour line. So the proposed contour line, this V shape here is indicative of all the water running this way towards the, all of the water running that way towards the trench here, and similarly up in this area here, we've got the proposed grade here, and the water will be running that way towards the sediment basin.
Very good. And not that it's a conservation issue, but I noticed that you did go into the driveway to get the slope back down to the road.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
your driveway, and which is typical, anytime that we do a roadway improvement project, as we're going along, there'll be some disturbance to the existing driveways and/or walkways where we're doing the work. That's inevitable. In this case here, just so happens that where your driveway is probably the place
Is the
where
high
the
point, right.
highest.
Yeah.
So we'd have to go in a little bit to match up with your
Sure.
pavement, so you get at least half a new driveway.
Yep, nope, overall, great design.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Richard Shapiro. I live on Estrella Lane, 3 Estrella Lane, off Seabrook. So my question really is, we talked about how long a process start to finish it might be. How disruptive will it be? Will the road be closed? You take a path?
Yes, there'll be a period of time when this section of the road would have to be closed.
From the highway down?
Yep, probably be police detail, and we'd be working on one side of the road with one-way traffic, basically, and
Okay.
a police officer at either end to, hold people off. Or maybe the contractor might have a flagman, it might not be a police detail, but basically controlling the one-way traffic there.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Paul Cap, Precinct 3. I live on Seabrook Drive.
Sir, could you speak up a little bit more?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Great presentation, but you've mentioned all kinds of distances, 100 feet, 400 feet, 600 feet, and 1,100 feet. Can you tell me what the entire project entails?
Sure. It's, the entire length is 1,100 feet, and let me, so from here at T-Ticket Highway up to, as you go down to the low point, then up to the hill, there's a high point up here, that's 1,100 feet.
Oh, okay.
So the first,
The reason I ask is when it was put in the paper, it was from 28 T-ticket path to 56 T-ticket path. And the road on both ends of that is in atrocious shape. So it needs to be extended. But if it's all that, then that's perfect.
yeah, so the keep bumping this thing. So the total is 1,100. The first 600 is down to about here, then 200 feet, and then another 100 feet.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Max Weinfuss. I live at 3 Seabrook Drive. Jim, so my question is, will there be any disturbance to my property as well at that intersection of Seabrook and T-Ticket Path?
No, there's a little bit of, just go back to, so this probably shows it best. So this is you here, right? On the
Yes.
corner of Seabrook. And there's just a little bit of apron work where we're tying into the existing pavement.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I have one more comment.
Okay.
Those were great illustrations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Thank you.
We should start requesting those from you, and they are great.
Yeah, we might
Very helpful.
have the other engineers do those.
I have one other question. What should people in the neighborhood do if they notice a problem with, say, the erosion controls or whatever? They contact DPW, they contact the conservation office. What's the most efficient thing for them to do?
I would say contact us at the DPW office. We'll, and I think it's something that I think has popped up in a few of the orders that we've received recently. We'll have a construction inspector, erosion and sedimentation control person on the job. And he's worked with Jennifer on the Shining Sea Bikeway, and we'll be also doing it on Chapcoit Road in this project. He'll be out on a regular, every day.
Okay. This is a
Oh.
DPW person?
Yes,
Is this Chris?
yes, yep,
He's getting a lot of experience.
yes, he is. Yep.
Thank you. So, Jen, Brendan, do you have anything you'd like to ask or any concerns?
Let's
Right.
have the vote.
Is there anything else from the public? All right, so on the motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
everyone.
Sir? Want to set a plan?
Thank you. You know, it floods there every time it rains.
I know.
10 bucks.
I know.
I'm gonna keep that. Right. I'm gonna take all this stuff out. Message, stuff.
Microphones are for the TV system. Well, I'm sorry, ma'am, that you weren't able to hear.
You could forward that comment to the administration. Yeah, we frequently get comments that people can't hear.
That's the only one. And that one works. You have to be like right up.
That works in the room? Yes.
Something does. I noticed
one
at
does.
watching a selectmen's meeting on
Jen was
TV
turning the
that
dial over there.
that
and I
there
don't know
were,
what it was doing.
that one of the microphones down there was, it had a lot of, back, what's the term? But anyway, and it was like the sound was coming in waves.
I know a couple come back.
You ask people to leave.
Nothing has ever happened,
Which will take about
Jen.
a second tonight.
we'll come down and give you a kiss.
This plane's still playing and rolling.
Excuse me, we'd like to continue the meeting. Thank you.
Get the hell out of here.
Thanks, Jim. All right, continued request for a hearing under a notice of intent. James and Paul DeVellis, 22 Dusty Miller Road, Falmouth, Massachusetts, for permission to raise and rebuild the existing house, install Title V septic system, dry wells, and all associated excavating, grading, and landscaping.
Madam Chairman, the quorum is Steve, Peter, Jamie, Mary, Betsy, Kevin, and Courtney.
All right, Peter, you're back, good. Steve,
Everybody except Mark.
okay. That
Jen?
helps?
This
Hi,
is in the
Tom,
wrong
good
thing.
evening.
Good evening. For the record, my name's Tom Bunker, BSS
It's
Design.
filed, misfiled, so I'll just leave it.
One sec. Were you ready?
Yes, sorry.
That's all right.
Okay.
It didn't look like Dusty Miller Road to me.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
This is the pop top.
Yes.
None of them today, unfortunately. but,
Oh,
I was told that didn't work.
Well, you should have quizzed the whole group. Some people were impressed. That was a
Yeah.
highlight of the year for me.
And now for something completely different. Well, I have an aerial photo here that we had from 1975, the aerial photo, which shows, and it says it's, I had it open earlier today. That was the photo from 75, and it showed the disturbance on the, this has to do with the, looking at the resource areas along, at the bottom of the hill. This is the existing conditions plan. So if you'd seen, there's a note I have on one area right here, which is fill, and that showed on the 1975 aerial photograph. There was, if you remember, there was one house there's a big white area, there's a house being built, and downhill from this house, there's another big white area, which was filled. I have a, it's not, yeah, different version of Adobe Reader here or something. Now this is open. This is a photo. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a picture of. It's. Hold on one second. This, yeah. Your computer is set up to try to open JPEGs with PDF Reader.
Say it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
That might be something we have to deal with tomorrow.
Yeah, because this is a JPEG. That's why it's not open. It's a JPEG, a picture, not a PDF.
So it's because that computer's automatically set to open it in Adobe Reader.
Yes.
That happened with mine, I have to switch it.
Yeah, and
Mine wanted a newer version.
I don't have a picture of, so I can open it with,
Can't you open it in Adobe and then save it as?
well, I can't open it with Adobe, but anyway, I just, this I was just gonna show, if I can get to it, wherever it is, the, okay, this is just a picture of that area that's on the site plan, where I have that chaining pin, I have a little hole. I just wanted to show you, oops, sorry, show you the grain size, just to show that this is not, oh, I don't know if I can zoom out of that a little, there. Whoops, not that much. Anyway, that's just to show you there's not dune sand here with these small pebbles and all. This is I think it's the landward edge of that fill that was put on that 75 aerial photo. And the previous picture was basically it's just looking toward the Buzzards Bay. This is the landward facing side of that. See, there's all cedar trees and all. Now I should be able to open this with the paint, and so it's this area in here that can't see it much. Anyway, yeah, that's the area I'm talking about, the disturbed area. So I'm just, and there is, I did adjust the wetland line in there also. You can see on this plan a little bit further landward, and a couple small ones, and there's actually an area right here that I think it was LEC had identified as a dune in the past. Now this is all upland going up this way, and there's some disturbed, looks like maybe some filling going in on here too, a couple little fragments of wetland in there also. So there are a little bit more resource areas in there, but they're all down at the bottom of the hill. I have this 50-foot A line from the dune, 50 feet from this wetland, so I have the A lines through here. The velocity zone here, the Falmouth velocity zone, as we had it shown already, and so this bank, this coastal bank right here is where it is steeper than 4 to 1 and comes up this high. And so obviously the A zone is the critical buffer line here. Is what we had in there before. So that's basically the same, on the upland part anyway, the same existing conditions. And we've moved the house back about 9 feet toward the road. And so this corner of the swimming pool, or swimming pool patio, before we were using that deck as precedent for doing work in the hill zone. Moved it back, so now there's no work proposed
we could hear it.
What?
No work proposed in the A-zone. Have the corner of the swimming pool here 50 feet back, and the house is moved back. It doesn't say explicitly on here, but we do have this plan drawn to keep this deck. The shed we showed to be removed. The deck is not labeled to be removed. I just put in quickly here, and this thing, deck to remain, so that is important. And as far as overcoming the presumption that this deck or this structure would be detrimental to the bank, I would say that that deck has been there for a good 30 years, and the bank, that area is still in pretty good condition all around it. The vegetation is good, no erosion or anything else, so we're not using that in the coverage calculations. We're not using that as, certainly not the deck, as existing coverage to be used as credit. The shed, I'm not using as existing coverage credit in the calculations. It has moved back, so now there is no work proposed in the A-zone except for the mitigation calculations. And so because we actually increased the coverage by the patio around the pool and decreased any credit by not counting the shed that comes out of here, so we do have now 1,130 square feet of mitigation planting. Most of it is in the A zone, but it's along here, the A, and in here in the B. And so that's our proposal. I'll take any questions, comments.
Thanks, Tom. Courtney?
Nothing right now.
Kevin?
No questions.
Betsy?
No questions, thank you.
I just have a bookkeeping question. Do we have for the file the photos you showed?
Now I can
We need them.
send them, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Jamie?
Generator AC compressors all out of jurisdiction.
Yeah, that's still shown behind the garage, either south or toward the road from the garage.
Perfect.
And they're outside of the Zone B.
Thank you.
Steve?
No, thank you for your change.
Peter?
No questions.
Mark?
No, Mark's not on it.
Oh, that's right, you're not on the clock. All right.
Jen?
Oh, my only question was the same one Jamie just asked, so. And I think it was the same one Brendan just told me, and then Jamie asked it, so we're fine.
So I'm gonna make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second that.
All right. Anything else from the board? Anything from the public? Yes, ma'am. Yes, please come up.
Hi, my name is Donna Driscoll. I am one of the family members who sold the house to Mr. DeVellis and Mr. DeVellis. And I am a little concerned because we own the lot next to the property, and I have some conservation issues, which this may not be the time to talk about it, but with the deck, I do feel like there is some erosion. So I would like for you, under advisement, to look at some of the erosion that is happening beyond the deck. The deck was built in 1981. We moved full-time to the Cape in 1979, and I do think there are some erosion issues. So that's my concern.
Okay, thank you.
Want to call for the vote?
Anything else? All right, all those in favor of closing the hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, so moved. Thank you. All right. Continued request for a certificate of compliance.
We're gonna continue that to.
Can I read it?
Oh, sorry.
Brendan Zaltis et al., lots 4 to 11, Pondlet Place and Pierce Place.
We're gonna continue that to the next hearing. They are waiting for the issuance of the extension, which you're signing tonight.
Right. All right.
So I'll make a motion to continue to next week.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, unanimous, so moved. Request to extend the existing order of conditions. Anastasios Parafestis, trustee, 152 and 160 Penzance Road, DEP number 25-4116. Request for a one-year extension. I remember this well.
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant has requested a one-year extension.
Have they done anything? Have they done anything with the enforcement?
The restoration plan draft is downstairs. We received it the other day. Brendan and I have to look at it and meet with Mark Manganello from LEC. I think the restoration work they would like to undertake this year, so we'll be getting back to them by the end of this week.
When do they expire?
Can we extend it till next week, this vote?
And is that all that's been done? Is developing the restoration plan?
They've developed the restoration plan for the project, yeah.
And when does this expire?
1 second, Madam Chairman.
I'm not happy about this one.
November 3rd.
Okay, let's
Let's
continue
wait till
this.
next week. I make a motion to continue this till next week.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, so moved. Thank you.
May I ask another request?
Yes.
Would you give us a report as to whether it addresses all the issues that we have?
The restoration plan does address the full condition to restore the wetland. I just need to confirm it, but from a quick review of it, it does look like it addresses the wetland violation issue. But I need to sit down and have a day to just, or a couple hours, just look at it.
Right, okay.
That's fine.
Thank you. All right, Ian and Catherine McDonald, 11 Snug Harbor Lane, DEP 25-4126. Request for a one-year extension.
Staff recommends a one-year extension.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, so moved. All right, one order of conditions to vote. John and Patricia Cipro, 0 Bywater Court, map 47-05-012-14A, Falmouth, Massachusetts.
47 Betsy, Mary, Jimmy. Here's Steve, Mark, all of them. You remember this, it's the construction of a single-family home. He gave you the little schematic with the cars. One Betsy just found in the other folder.
I know, I was gonna say, well, I'm real refreshed on this one. He's keeping the big tree.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I think I may want to condition about not using breakaway panels.
Wait,
It's in the A flood zone. I think what he was proposing was the flood vents,
Yeah.
not the
Well, there are-
breakaway panels.
Well, he mentioned the use
I
of
know, and I
breakaway
think he
panels and.
was, because
Use that verbiage.
yeah, he
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
And
In
then
his
he said,
illustration.
you know, the
Yeah.
holes at the water.
not in
flood
the
through.
I
velocity
thought he
zone.
said
All
that
right.
was the house across the street.
Well, it's not in the
He's-
velocity
Yeah,
zone.
he's not in the
You would put
velocity.
on something with
Yeah,
Yeah,
flood
I mean,
vents.
so he's
Yeah.
got a flood vent.
Yeah.
the
all right.
elevation that he showed lattice work.
I know.
Yes, but he said that wasn't necessarily what
The
he's
house.
planning on, so I don't know why the picture was there, but.
And-
Mark?
just for the record, I'm not against breakaway panels.
Okay. Okay,
But we're
I
so
don't think
it's not
we
the
have any
velocity
leg to
zone.
stand
I misspoke on that, so.
Thank you.
But
I mean,
point
the
taken,
house
we
is up
will
pretty high.
discuss it the next time it comes up. Make sure that
Good.
I'm not using a royal we or something.
Let me just double check that for you guys, but I'm almost positive he is not in a velocity zone. No, I don't think so either.
I think that's right.
Couple hundred examples, non-performing. All of them.
Where's that? Oh, yeah, AE, yeah, AE 12.
I make a motion to accept this order of conditions as discussed.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, so moved. Okay, and one more thing, other business. I did finally speak with Pat Harris, Associate Town Council, about the question of commissioners and alternates participating in hearings when they have missed something, so they're not on the quorum anymore, up to not including deliberation and voting. But, for the benefit of their ability to contribute to the discussion, ask useful questions and that sort of thing. And she advised that this was perfectly fine. And she also advised that it's within the discretion of the chair to set the practice on this. It doesn't require a vote. If people would, we can certainly discuss this. And if people want to vote, I'm willing to vote. I thought, however, that for the sake of the next chair, maybe I would go with the practice of not voting so that the next chair can do what they want. But that can be part of the discussion, which way we want to go on that.
That's why you get the big bucks to make
Yeah,
these decisions.
Mary, can you just clarify, so members not on the quorum can participate in continued hearing discussions and deliberations?
No, up to the point where the
Not
hearing is
deliberation.
closed.
Okay, all right.
I think that's fair. Me too.
Courtney?
I believe that the practice had been that if you weren't on the quorum, you didn't participate, period.
It had been, and now we're
Yeah, I
proposing
understand,
changing it.
and there was a good reason for that, I think, and that was to facilitate the fact that these meetings oftentimes dragged on, because we had a lot of people that wanted to contribute their 2 cents worth, whether they were on the quorum or not.
Yes.
And,
Who just said that?
I would
I-
just
I,
say that the
so-
composition of the board has changed considerably since those days, and I don't find that a problem anymore myself, but.
Okay, I mean, personally, I think it should be kept, but, that's because things can always change rather quickly, and if you were trying to be consistent, I think,
Well, the next chair could change it, or she could change
I
it.
could, right, and I think it's something that's gonna require announcement each time it comes up for a while, but, so that the applicants and their representatives understand what's going on. But, let's have some more discussion. Betsy?
So, I understand your point, but I actually think it's a good idea, because each of us
Perspective.
each of us kind of specialize in certain things. And normally, I agree with you, normally, a lot of times you don't have to put something in. It's already been addressed. But if it's something where you have some expertise, where the other people on the board don't have expertise or historical background,
Right.
then say it in the hearing.
Yeah, I don't really see the downside to it. I agree about the voting piece, because that's,
they can't vote, and I
yeah,
think if they're.
that I agree with, simply because if you're
Well,
on the quorum-
there has been a change in the state law, so, I'm not proposing to take it this far. I think we'd open ourselves up to problems for sure, but, if somebody, I think they have to sign an affidavit that they've, watched everything on TV and read all the materials and all that kind of stuff, and then they can participate all the way through voting, but I'm not entirely comfortable with that. I think it just opens us up to whatever.
Let's just stick to
Somebody
what's on
wants
the
to
table.
challenge a decision, that's one thing that they're gonna pick on, so.
Well, baby steps. Let's go with the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark, did you have any
I'm,
comments?
of course, totally in favor of opening the discussions to anyone, not including deliberation, of course, but I think I agree with Betsy that we get sometimes expertise which wasn't available at an earlier meeting. I think it's important to get it on the table.
I agree with you. Anyone else? Okay, on the question of voting, does anybody have a problem if we don't vote this? I really,
It's just, I said it's because you get the big money. We're willing to put this on your shoulders.
I guess it all depends on which way you
Can
choose
I have
to.
a raise?
Yes,
Decide.
we'll double your salary.
But can we hear what your ruling might be?
Well, my ruling, well, I would just change in practice, and we're going to do what's being discussed here. We're gonna,
Allow discussion.
going
allow
forward, allow
discussion, but not
discussion for
voting.
everyone who's present on the board.
Good ruling.
Okay.
And I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, so.
Ooh,
Thanks, everybody.
Where did that
brilliant.
I'm gonna do a site visit.
Am I buying property?